Absolutely pivotal context to go over. Three things to know up front ahead of a midnight deadline imposed on the Trump administration. First, the sheer size and scope of what the general public is about to have in its hands is colossal. A mountain of documents, hundreds of gigabytes of information encompassing trip logs, financial records, interview summaries, paper and electronic documents, and on and on. It's going to take some time to work through all of it once we get it. A team of our colleagues are standing by to do just that, to go through each and every word on each and every page. The second thing to know about this afternoon's expected data dump is that, yes, we'll focus, of course, on what is actually in the release and what we're learning, but we'll also be on the lookout for what is not included. Remember, Trump's Justice Department is not voluntarily putting this information out. It was legally compelled to do so by a bipartisan coalition of lawmakers in Congress. The deadline this day, a tick before midnight. And yet this morning, the Trump administration made a rather startling admission. Here's Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche.
I expect that we're going to release several 100,000 documents today, and those documents will come in all different forms, photographs and other materials associated with all of the investigations into Mr. Epstein. And so I expect that we're going to release more documents over the next couple of weeks. So today, several 100,000, and then over the next couple of weeks, I expect several 100,000 more.
Next couple of weeks, what? If you heard that and said, that's not what the law said, then you and that bipartisan coalition in Congress probably have something in common. Following those comments this morning, Democrats on the House Oversight Committee released a statement suggesting the Trump administration is in violation of the law for failing to produce everything before tonight's deadline. Quote, for months, Attorney General Pam Bondi has denied survivors the transparency and accountability they have demanded and deserve, and has defied the Oversight Committee's subpoena.
At this point, I wouldn't be surprised to see Donald Trump advocating for the impeachment of Pam Bondi, because not only has she screwed up this entire Epstein cover-up, but she just screwed Donald Trump. The DOJ is breaking the law today by refusing to release the full Epstein files. But even with that said, even with Pam Bondi committing a crime, she still wasn't able to cover up for Donald Trump, because although there were files after files completely redacted, there were some she just missed and photos that are already haunting Donald Trump. We are going to get into the images that were revealed today that Pam Bondi accidentally let slip out the door and color the rest of what will be coming out of these files. Now, before we get into these photos that were released, clearly accidentally leaked out of the DOJ, I'm surprised if they haven't already taken them down. I want to start with the context we need on what is and is not coming out of this release from Nicole Wallace right here. By the way, I am trying to do my best to gather all the information I can for you and share it with you. Please leave your likes and comments, and I would be grateful if you subscribed. Let's continue. Some absolutely pivotal context to go over. Three things to know up front ahead of a midnight deadline imposed on the Trump administration. First, the sheer size and scope of what the general public is about to have in its hands is colossal. A mountain of documents, hundreds of gigabytes of information encompassing trip logs, financial records, interview summaries, paper and electronic documents, and on and on. It's going to take some time to work through all of it once we get it. A team of our colleagues are standing by to do just that, to go through each and every word on each and every page. The second thing to know about this afternoon's expected data dump is that, yes, we'll focus, of course, on what is actually in the release and what we're learning, but we'll also be on the lookout for what is not included. Remember, Trump's Justice Department is not voluntarily putting this information out. It was legally compelled to do so by a bipartisan coalition of lawmakers in Congress. The deadline this day, a tick before midnight. And yet this morning, the Trump administration made a rather startling admission. Here's Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche. I expect that we're going to release several 100,000 documents today, and those documents will come in all different forms, photographs and other materials associated with all of the investigations into Mr. Epstein. And so I expect that we're going to release more documents over the next couple of weeks. So today, several 100,000, and then over the next couple weeks, I expect several 100,000 more. Next couple weeks, what? If you heard that and said that's not what the law said, then you and that bipartisan coalition in Congress probably have something in common. Following those comments this morning, Democrats on the House Oversight Committee released a statement suggesting the Trump administration is in violation of the law for failing to produce everything before tonight's deadline. Quote, "For months, Attorney General Pam Bondi has denied survivors the transparency and accountability they have demanded and deserve, and has defied the Oversight Committee subpoena. The Department of Justice is now making clear it intends to defy Congress itself, even as it gives star treatment to Epstein's convicted co-conspirator, Ghislaine Maxwell. Courts around the country have repeatedly intervened when this administration has broken the law. We are now examining all legal options in the face of this violation of federal law." Finally, though, the third and most important thing to keep in mind ahead of time, what we're expected to learn today is real life and the stuff of real life nightmares. Trauma for hundreds of innocent women, some of whom were girls at the time, people who never ever asked for anything more than the truth to come out, never wanted more than justice. And today, although it appears there is still some work to do on that front, it is very obvious that Pam Bondi understands that she will not be able to evade accountability here. She's going to do whatever possible, and certainly has. As every file that I've seen is just black page after black page, fully redacted image after fully redacted image. Kayleigh McEnany is posting a lot about Bill Clinton, but she doesn't seem to care about any other president involved in the Epstein files. This release was so targeted. It was so obvious. But it's also so obvious how stupid the people in Donald Trump's administration are that they let it get to this point, that they have allowed the narrative to consume them, when usually Donald Trump, and I don't like to give them credit on anything, but is often able to set the narrative, set what we talk about, set the conversation, set the terms. He couldn't with this. We've done it. We've taken the power out of their hands. And Pam Bondi, in an effort to rectify this all for her boss, has only screwed him, because in a dump full of nothing, the accidental mentions of Donald Trump are that much more damaging. When you go and search his name on the DOJ website with the Epstein files, nothing comes up. But when you look closely at the photos, you begin to see that he does. And that's why he's panicked tonight. And that's why Pam Bondi's panicked and in big trouble. Midas Touch posted, "Looks like at least some photos of Donald Trump slipped through the cracks in the DOJ's attempts to hide them in this partial, heavily redacted release." You can see Donald Trump at Jeffrey Epstein's home with photos and photos and photos. Right there is Trump surrounded by half-naked women. More photos of Trump with Melania. Photos of Trump everywhere in Epstein's home that are now being released and showing their closeness. They let it slip. There is no way that Pam Bondi meant for that photo to get out. But Donald Trump is in the Epstein files. It is impossible to dispute that at this point. Every time he's called it a hoax or fake or I'm not in it or what are you talking about or who's Epstein? I bumped into him once at a dinner, Donald Trump in a photo that doesn't even appear to have Epstein in it. It's just a photo of Donald Trump with women at these parties. So what does that tell you? That Jeffrey Epstein was keeping photos of him and Donald Trump that he wasn't included in. He was keeping photos, Epstein was, of just Trump at his parties, at his house, engaged in this cabal of criminality. And so if that photo leaked, what is to come? That is the question that we ask. That is the question that we want to know. Really, where my head goes is more so than just the photos or the footage. Of course, the footage of Epstein's prison cell that night is where my head goes. Thinking about Trump's cover-up in the first term, because if they went this far, how far did they go then? That's what I want to know. But that requires continued pressure to be put on these people. It's what we are seeing from Adam Schiff tonight, calling out the criminality of Pam Bondi, talking about the next steps, and you're going to want to hear what the senator had to say. Senator Schiff of California, he's a member of the Senate Judiciary Committee and has called for an audit of who at the Department of Justice has handled all the Epstein-related records. I want to understand what you're looking for. Obviously, you sort of planted the flag on that audit, raising the question. We know they've been through all of the files at least once looking for Donald Trump's name. That was reported by multiple news organizations. Susie Wiles confirms in a series of interviews that Trump is in the files. But I wonder if you have evidence that things were tampered with or just concerns that they could be that led to that call for the audit. Well, when I issued that letter, it was concerns that they wouldn't be forthcoming in what they were going to provide to the American people. And those fears have become all too realized today with this completely unlawful withholding of information from the Justice Department. It is a violation of the law. And I think, frankly, the remedies now have to be stronger than what I earlier proposed. I think we ought to bring Pam Bondi before the Senate Judiciary Committee, demand answers as to why the department has violated the law. It's not just that they had 30 days to go through this to do the production. They've had the whole year to do it. They promised to release the files. They haven't done it. They could have been completely ready for this moment, and they're not. Or they're just simply willfully withholding the materials. I think the Judiciary Committee should do its real oversight and bring her in and demand answers. I also think we need an Inspector General's investigation of what they've done and to ride shotgun on this to make sure that they're producing everything they're required to. We should consider other remedies, including litigation if necessary, but there needs to be accountability here. What did you think they would do? I mean, are you at all surprised that they've been less than forthcoming? I'm not surprised that they have withheld, but I am surprised that it is to this scale. What I imagine would happen is they would make a production today, and then we would have to fight to find out what was redacted and what wasn't. The statute requires them to make a report to Congress within 15 days about anything that's withheld and what they produced. I think we should also demand that right now, because what Todd Blanche is saying is, we've given you some now, we'll give you some later, we may give you some after that. If they read the statute as saying that they can string this out indefinitely and await giving us that cataloging of what they produced and what they haven't, we may never find the answer to that question. So at a minimum, the Justice Department needs to produce that summary, that log right now. What have they produced now? What have they withheld? And why have they withheld it? And those answers need to be provided as soon as possible. If you put back sort of your investigator-prosecutor hat on, Pam Bondi went on Fox News and told the hosts of a program there that the list is sitting on her desk. She does an about-face before releasing any list. Kash Patel went on Joe Rogan and talked about 300 gigabytes of data, videotapes, and pictures and whatnot. He testified before Congress that there's nothing, that basically Epstein didn't traffic any women to anyone, and we know from the survivors that that is a lie. What do you think they are covering up? What do you think they see that turns Bondi and Patel into liars on the specific issue of the Epstein files, something they've talked about for years? Well, the only one they really serve is Donald Trump, so they must see something in those files that they don't want to share with the American people. Now, it may not be evidence of criminality on Trump's behalf, but it may be evidence that embarrasses the president, reflects poorly on the president. And of course, written into that legislation is very explicit prohibition on withholding anything for reasons of reputational harm to any elected official. So that is not a legal basis for them to withhold information. But I wouldn't be surprised if, as a practical matter, they have promised the president they won't release anything that makes him look bad, even if it comes at the cost of the victims getting the full information. And that's just not going to cut it. If we're going to do serious oversight, frankly, unlike what we've done so far, Bondi needs to come in and actually answer questions, not just use her time to try to insult or attack members of the committee. But we need this on a bipartisan basis. The legislation passed on a bipartisan basis. Both parties ought to insist on answers. And if not, I think the public needs to hold them accountable for this continuing cover-up. Let me add crucial context here, because what we're witnessing is the Trump administration openly violating federal law to protect Trump from embarrassment while denying justice to Epstein's victims. First, understand what the law requires. Congress passed bipartisan legislation with a clear deadline, midnight tonight. The DOJ must release all Epstein files, not some files, not redacted files, not files over the next few weeks, all files by midnight. Todd Blanche admitted this morning they're not complying. We'll release several 100,000 today and several 100,000 more over the next couple weeks. That's not what the law says. That's the Trump administration openly admitting they're violating federal law. And why? Adam Schiff nailed it. They serve only Donald Trump. They've seen something in those files that embarrasses or reflects poorly on Trump, and they've promised him they won't release it even if it violates the law and denies justice to victims. The law explicitly prohibits withholding information for reputational harm to elected officials. But Trump doesn't care about laws. He cares about protecting himself. And Bondi is willing to break the law to do it. Now let's talk about what accidentally slipped through their cover-up. Photos of Trump at Epstein's home. Trump surrounded by half-naked women. Trump with Melania at Epstein's parties. Photos everywhere showing their closeness. And here's what's most damning. Some photos don't even have Epstein in them. They're just Trump at these parties with women. Why would Epstein keep photos of Trump at his parties that Epstein isn't even in? Because Epstein was documenting Trump's participation in whatever was happening at these parties. That's evidence. That's compromise. That's Epstein keeping receipts on one of the most powerful men in America participating in his operation. And if those photos accidentally got out, despite Bondi's best efforts to redact everything, what else is in there? What videos exist? What testimony from victims names Trump? What flight logs show Trump's trips? What financial records connect Trump to Epstein's operations? Bondi went on Fox News and said the client list was on her desk. Then she reversed course and released nothing. Kash Patel testified to Congress that Epstein didn't traffic women to anyone, which survivors know is a lie. Susie Wiles admitted Trump is in the files. They've all but admitted they're covering up for Trump, and now they're breaking federal law to complete that cover-up. The scale of redaction is stunning. Black page after black page, redacted image after redacted image. They clearly went through everything looking for Trump's name. Multiple news organizations reported that, and they redacted it all. Except they missed some photos because Bondi and her team are incompetent. They were so focused on redacting Trump's name in documents that they didn't catch photos showing Trump at Epstein's home. That incompetence is Trump's entire administration. They're not sending their best. They're sending loyalists who will break laws for him but are too stupid to do it effectively. And now they're in violation of federal law. House Oversight Democrats are examining all legal options. Schiff is calling for Bondi to testify before Senate Judiciary. He wants an Inspector General investigation. He's talking about litigation. The remedies need to be strong. Bondi needs to be hauled before Congress and forced to answer under oath why she violated federal law. She needs to explain why she went on Fox News lying about having the client list. She needs to account for every redaction and justify each one. And if she can't, if the only explanation is that she was protecting Trump from embarrassment at the expense of victims getting justice, then she needs to be held in contempt, impeached, prosecuted. Because this isn't just about Trump's reputation. This is about hundreds of victims who were girls when Epstein trafficked them. Girls who deserve to know the truth about which powerful men participated in their abuse. Girls who deserve justice. And Bondi is denying them that justice to protect one powerful man's reputation. That's evil. That's corruption. That's exactly what victims feared would happen when Trump took power. Schiff is right that this requires bipartisan pressure. The law passed with Republican votes. Republicans like Thomas Massie and Marjorie Taylor Greene have demanded these files. The MAGA base wants them released. So Republicans in Congress need to step up. They need to join Democrats in demanding Bondi comply with the law. They need to subpoena her testimony. They need to support Inspector General investigations. Because if they don't, they're complicit in the cover-up. They're choosing Trump's reputation over victims' justice. And voters will remember that in 2026. The drip, drip, drip from the Epstein estate continues. 95,000 photos, most not yet reviewed. Each batch reveals more connections, more powerful men, more evidence of the network. That pressure combined with Bondi's violation of federal law creates an untenable situation for Trump. Either comply with the law and release files that embarrass him, or continue violating the law and face legal consequences. There's no good option. That's why Trump is panicking. That's why Bondi screwed up the cover-up. That's why photos accidentally got through their redactions. They're desperate, they're incompetent, and they're losing control of the narrative. We took that power from them by refusing to let this story die, by demanding accountability, by keeping pressure on. And we can't stop now. Subscribe to stay updated as this unfolds. Share this with everyone who needs to know Trump is in the Epstein files and his DOJ is breaking the law to hide it. Keep demanding full release. Keep calling your representatives. Keep the pressure on, because the victims deserve justice. The truth deserves to come out, and Trump deserves to be held accountable for whatever he did with Jeffrey Epstein that he's so desperate to hide.